As early as 1939, both the Allies and Nazi Germany began to make invasion plans of Norway. Norway supplied Germany with iron and was strategically important to control. The Germans were the ones who managed to implement the plans the fastest. On the night between April 8 and 9, 1940, Germany attacked both Denmark and Norway in a coordinated surprise attack. The Germans had the same goals in Norway as in Denmark, and one was to capture the king. The King of Denmark and Norway were brothers. Hitler was convinced that if the kings could be captured, this could force a quick capitulation. He was right. When the Danish king was captured, Denmark capitulated in just a few hours. However, in Norway, the royal family, the government and most members of the Storting were able to flee before the occupying forces reached Oslo. The heavy cruiser Blücher sailed into the Oslofjord in the early morning hours of the 9th of April. Accompanied by several smaller vessels, the Blücher was transporting German troops to the capital. Their task was to arrest the king and the members of the government to compel Norway to capitulate immediately. Invasion. The cruiser Blücher and two smaller German naval vessels were tasked with attacking Oslo, Norway's capital. All the soldiers on board Blücher had been told that their main priority was to capture the royal family. Nearly 3 weeks earlier, the king and crown prince's escape began in the pre-dawn hours of April 9th. Alarms had rung shortly after midnight, when German troops were already sailing and flying into Norway, targeting Moss, Oslo, Horten, Arendal, Kristiansand, Egersund, Stavanger, Bergen, Trondheim and Narvik. Crown Prince Olav drove his American Buick himself from the royal estate at Skogum to the palace where his father lived in Oslo. "I had decided to run down anyone who tried to stop or hinder the car," he reportedly said later. He didn't trust anyone else to drive. His wife, Crown Princess Martha, was seated next to him and the 3 children were in the back seat, after being told to dress for a trip to the mountains. As they drove out the gate of their suburban compound, the Crown Prince warned his royal guards to prepare for armed combat. At 4:21 in the morning on April 9, 1940, the fighting began in the Oslofjord when the cannons on the fortress of Oscarsborg fired upon the German ships. Blücher was hit and sank and more than 800 German soldiers were killed. At 7 a.m., the president of the parliament, Carl Joachim Hambro, was waiting for the royals at Ostbanen, now Oslo's central station, with extra trains organized to take the royals, government officials and politicians north to Hamar. The sinking of the Blücher was of crucial importance as the German attack on the capital was delayed and allowed the king to flee. The royal family at this time consisted of King Haakon VII, Crown Prince Olav, Crown Princess Martha and the 3 children Prince Harald, Princess Astrid and Princess Ragnhild. Queen Maud died in 1938. King Haakon was the only one living at the castle in Oslo. The others in the family lived on the Skogum estate in Aksa. On the night between April 8 and April 9, the royals were notified that the Germans were on their way to Norway. No surrender. At 4:21 in the morning on April 9, 1940, the Norwegians were offered terms of surrender. The king and the government talked over the phone and agreed to refuse the offer. Crown Prince Olav dressed his children and notified his wife before they traveled to the castle in Oslo in the middle of the night. When the message reached the castle that the fighting raged at the Oscarsborg fortress, it was decided to evacuate the royal family. Norway was at war. The royals departed from the castle by car to Oslo railway station. Here they meet the government and boarded the train which left the station exactly 7:23 on course for Hamar, the largest city in the Norwegian inland. The royal family had to stop at Lillestrøm as the city was bombed by German planes. The royals had to leave the train and take cover in the forests for a short period while the bombs fall. The word that the king was on his way to Hamar had been broadcast on radio, so along the entire railway line there were Norwegians with flags and cheering as the train passed by to show their support of the king's decision not to surrender. The royal family travelled from Hamar train station to the estate of Salid where they were accommodated. A few hours later, Prime Minister Nygaardsvold arrived to update the king. He announced to the king that the parliament was split and had not made a decision. He therefore asked to step down. The king refused, let the prime minister step back, and travelled with Crown Prince Olav to Hamar city to speak to Parliament. King Haakon spoke to Parliament and simply asked them to come together. The king refused to let the government step down, and he refused to approve a surrender. The meeting lasted until the evening. King Haakon and Crown Prince Olav travelled back to the Salid estate for dinner. While the dinner was being served, the royals heard on the radio that Vidkun Quisling had conducted a coup d'état in Oslo and formed a Nazi-friendly government. Almost at the same time, the chief of the police called from Hamar city. He informed the royals that they must leave the estate as soon as possible. German forces were on their way. The royals left the farm in minutes and headed east towards the town of Elverum. The car ride was long and emotional. It was during this journey that the royals decided to split up so that they could ensure the safety of Prince Harald as heir to the throne. When the royal arrived at 21:30 in the evening, Crown Princess Martha travelled further. She took her 3 children with her and headed to her native country of Sweden, which was not at war. As the Crown Princess travelled further, King Haakon and Crown Prince Olav were accommodated at the farm of Garda. The government and parts of Parliament were also now gathered at Elverum. This was the Norwegian royal family its first day of war, April 9, 1940. They did not know when or if they would ever see each other again. Exile. It soon became clear that Norway would be unable to withstand the German forces, even with Allied support. The Allies decided to withdraw, leaving the king with a difficult choice. He decided it would be best to leave the country, together with Crown Prince Olav and the government. They departed from Norway on the British heavy cruiser Devonshire on the 7th of June. A government in exile was established in London. It was essential that Norway's constitutional powers be upheld in unoccupied territory. For the next 5 years, the government in exile led and coordinated Norwegian war efforts from its base in London. King Haakon became the foremost symbol of the Norwegian people's will to fight for a free and independent Norway, and his radio broadcasts from London served as a source of inspiration for young and old alike. In Norway, the German Occupation Authority, led by Reich Commissioner Joseph Terboven, attempted to establish a legal occupation government, elected by the Storting, to collaborate with the Nazis. However, this required the king's abdication. In a speech on the 8th of July 1940, King Haakon made clear that he would continue to fulfill his duties as King of Norway, once again refusing to comply with German demands. On the 25th of September, plans to establish an occupation government were finally abandoned. Terboven declared the king and the government deposed, and outlawed all political parties other than the Nasjonal Samling, Norwegian National Socialist Party. All activities in support of the royal family were forbidden. King Haakon and the government in exile stood firm in their resolve to fight until Norway was liberated. On the 30th of June 1944, the government in exile in London appointed Crown Prince Olav Chief of Defence. He overtook leadership of the Norwegian armed forces and cooperated with the Allied powers. Crown Princess Martha and her 3 children crossed the border into Sweden on the night of the 9th of April 1940. They stayed with her Swedish family until the 12th of August, when they traveled to the USA at the invitation of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Her friendship with the US President and his wife opened doors for the Crown Princess, who worked assiduously to promote Norwegian interests while living in the USA. Germany capitulated on the 8th of May 1945. On the 13th of May, Crown Prince Olav and 5 government ministers returned to a liberated Norway. King Haakon, Crown Princess Martha and the children returned on the 7th of June, 5 years to the day that the king and crown prince had been forced to leave the country.